Hola, I'm Elena.
And I'm Gayatri.
And we're here to drill into your heads the differences between the preterite and imperfect tenses in Spanish. This can be very difficult to get the hang of at first, because the preterite and imperfect tenses are both used to describe the past, when in English we only have one past tense. However, there are a lot of little tricks and hints that make it very easy to tell the difference between when you're supposed to use which tense, even in Spanish, I promise. Would I lie to you? Would I?
Let's start with a quick review of preterite and imperfect by themselves. Remember, the preterite tense is used to describe an event that has already happened. For example, he walked becomes él caminó, and so on. For a basic AR verb conjugation, the endings are e, aste, o, amos, and aron. And for ER/IR verbs, the endings are I, iste, io, imos, iron.
The imperfect, on the other hand, is a lot simpler and doesn't have as many of those horrifying irregulars as the preterite tense does. Its AR verb endings are aba, abas, aba, abamos, aban, and the ER and IR endings are ia, ias, ia, iamos, and ian.
Now that all the boring stuff you already knew about is out of the way, let's talk about telling these two tenses apart. The most important things to remember is that the preterite is for actions that happened once, and the imperfect is the description of a scene or any actions that were ongoing. All you have to ask yourself is if the event in question had a definite end and beginning, or if it was just something happening in the background, like a description or a scene. Think of it as a movie. Are we setting a scene or are we fighting the bad guys?
Here's an example of a scene in the preterite. I opened my door and looked outside. The sun stared me down as I made my way down the steps and yanked open the door to my car. I drove to school and wished I could go home and not learn about Spanish verb tenses. See how all that was action? The scene was moving along. If the same scene were done in the imperfect, it would probably look more like this. The sun was shining and there were clouds in the sky. I was opening my door thinking about how I didn't want to go to school. See how it feels like nothing's actually happening? Sure, the sun was shining, there were clouds, the door was opening, but where's the action? It's because the imperfect is a build-up. It leads up to the action. That's why you often find the preterite interrupting the imperfect, like, the sun was shining when I went outside. Let's go over a few more in English before we start adding the conjugations in Spanish. She slept past her alarm. It's a one-time action, or is it an ongoing action? Well, hopefully she only slept late once if she wants to avoid attention. No, this sentence is in the preterite, because we can assume that she has finished sleeping past her alarm, and it's in the past.
But she was sleeping past her alarm is different. This is an ongoing action, just a state of being. It never implies that she has finished sleeping past her alarm. It just says that she was sleeping past her. Was. It's setting the scene. We're still waiting for the real action to happen. If it says she was sleeping past her alarm when the doorbell rang, the doorbell ringing would be in preterite because it is a definite action interrupting an indefinite one.
So how about I ate my dinner versus I was eating my dinner? Can you tell which one is which? Well, I ate my dinner is the preterite because it's a finished action, but I was eating my dinner is just kind of setting the scene. Does it ever say that I finished eating dinner? How do you know I'm not still eating dinner right now? You don't. You don't know me.
Anyway, the imperfect isn't just strictly scene setting, because the imperfect is any action that doesn't have an infinite end. It also describes the past in general, such as when I was a young warthog, or he was a fine young fellow. And it is used for actions that are repeated, like he rode my bike every day, or she went swimming every day. Wow, these people are quite active, aren't they?
But this is only in English. You have to know what you're looking for in Spanish. Hopefully by now, you know what all these phrases up there on the screen mean, because they're going to help you a whole lot when deciding whether to put something in the preterite or the imperfect.
Key phrases that signal the imperfect are any phrases that imply a setting, scene, or repeated action. This includes siempre, a menudo, frecuentemente, generalmente, a veces, nunca, and others like them. If you are saying you always took the bus, you're not referring to a specific time you took the bus, and therefore it's in the imperfect. If you're not sure whether a word signals the imperfect or not, ask yourself if you would put it in a description or an action scene. Every day I took my dog to the park is more like a narrator setting the scene, while I took my dog to the park is a one-time event that you'd find during the action.
Because the preterite's actions only occur one singular time, key phrases to look for are any, well, one-time events. Anoche, esta tarde, el mes pasado, en ese momento, and more. Last night I worked. Last year I celebrated my birthday in the park with butterflies and rainbows. They're one-time events. You get the picture.
So those are the basic rules of preterite versus imperfect. Do you think you're ready to try it out in Spanish? Awesome! What's going to happen is that we're going to tell you a little story called Little Red Riding Hood, in Spanish of course, and we're going to stop along the way and let you watchers decide whether the preterite or imperfect belongs in any given spot.
Alright, the first word is already a decision to make. Whoops, well, better start early. The verb is ser, so it's a state of being, and therefore it's setting the scene. So that's easy. So, era una niña muy inteligente que siempre... Do you remember what kind of verbs are signaled by siempre? Siempre means always, so it's imperfect. Siempre llevaba una caperuza roja, y por eso... Well, this is a bit more tricky. Is she just being called Caperucita Roja one time? Or is it a constant thing?
Of course not. A name is a constant state of being. It's something that would be a part of setting the scene. A name isn't an action, so ella se llamaba Caperucita Roja. Un día ella descubrir. Descubrir, to discover, only happens once. That's why it's in the preterite. This is signaled by un día, which implies it happens only once. Ella descubrió que su abuela está enferma. Estar is a state of being. It isn't just a one-time action. So, estaba.
But the next part is tricky, because it switches right from scene setting to actual action, in the same sentence. Ella decidió ayudar. She decided. It's done. It's over. Same with the next two. They're all singular actions, which makes it easy. En una canasta, ella puso muchas frutas y salió para la casa de su abuela. This is all action, so it's all in the preterite. Pero en el camino, un lobo feroz preguntó ella sobre su canasta. It's all action.
But wait, it's getting tricky again. Ella dijo is obvious. She's saying something, which only happens once. But the next verb, tener, is more ambiguous. Basically, it's not that she has fruits once and then they're gone. She has them for an indefinite time. They're still with her even when the sentence is over. Therefore, dijo de tenía frutas para su abuela would be correct.
Thankfully, you can see that the rest of the passage is all action, which means it's all preterite, right? Cuando ella llegó a su casa, encontró el lobo en vez de su abuela. Un cazador salvó ella, y después ellos encontraron la abuela. But don't forget about estar. That's not preterite, that's a state of being, which makes it imperfect. It doesn't just end, she doesn't just stop being. Therefore, imperfect tense. Todo estaba bien.
Thanks for learning with us. Now don't you dare forget what we just taught you. Remember, imperfect sets the scene while preterite dishes out the action.